Bonjour, wie geht's? Wie steht's noch immer aus Fahrbeinen? Buenos dias, ni hao ma, zdravstvuyte. Today's discussion focuses on Tesla's stock price and its valuation implications relative to GM, Ford, and other auto companies. So there's a mystery that's been sitting out in the marketplace for the last 6 to 8 months. And what that mystery is, how can a company that sold 100,000 vehicles be worth more than a company like Ford or GM that sells millions of vehicles in 1 year? And I believe I have the answer to this. So right now, for example, one of the issues going on with Tesla is in the 200-mile category with supercharger backup, there's only one manufacturer in the world that has a solution in that space, and that's Tesla. If you read Electrotech or some of the other EV-focused pubs, what you'll notice is that Tesla has begun outselling Mercedes, BMW, and other big names in the $100,000 car category. So what this suggests is that there are some fairly savvy owners out there who can figure out where a good value is in a vehicle, and they're making the switch to Tesla, despite the fact that the companies they're currently doing business with have been in business for 100 years plus, and therefore shouldn't have any problems retaining their customers. I had a interesting encounter with a good friend of mine recently who is a doctor, and he was a Porsche Panamera owner. And I asked him why he got rid of his Panamera, and he said they informed me that my brake job was going to be $10,000. And so I decided to trade the car in and get a BMW instead. His area doesn't have supercharger coverage, so he would have gotten a Tesla if he could have. But I just was stunned because for well-heeled customers, they will make the change and move away from brands they've long time had a relationship with. So why is this a bombshell? What does it have to do with the Tesla valuation? Well, if you look currently at the growth rate of both GM and Ford, what you'll notice is Tesla growth rate is driven by the $300 price of its stock. GM and Ford stock prices are down and suffering. And what the market is saying is that, in essence, given a certain number of years in its current condition, both GM and Ford will be bankrupt. In the case of Ford, they just got rid of their CEO. In case of GM, I'm fascinated because they're having record profits, and they do have a semi-solution in the form of the Bolt to what Tesla's doing in electric. The individual is being given a little bit of leeway. Hello, doggy. Nice to see you. So what I want to share with you here is that there's an interesting phenomenon occurring, which is that, in essence, what the market is saying to GM and Ford is, your companies are currently bankrupt, and you're worth the value of selling off your operations and plants, but nothing more. Now, for me, this is shocking because GM in particular just went through a bankruptcy, and so I was thinking they may be more inclined to organize and execute better than they have. I mean, their stock price being level is about the speed of things, but they are making money. Another thing that just happened at GM with Ms. Barra is they sold off their European operations because they've had a long time situation of losing money there. And the $2 billion that they got from that was redistributed to investors. So what GM is saying by doing this is that we have $2 billion in hand. We see nothing to do with that money that would enhance our company's short and long-term future. So therefore, we're returning that cash to investors. Now, I thought this was kind of crazy because GM owns no supercharger plants, and they're buying their batteries from one of the Korean big entities. And so I really have a sense that, as one of my buddies pointed out, is there are certain people who are hunters and there are certain people who are gatherers. The gatherers are good at gathering up the cash that the hunters have shown where it is. But the problem right now is that Elon Musk is a hunter. And so therefore, if those companies choose to maintain a gatherer philosophy, they end up going out of business and costing millions of jobs in the process. Another sort of caveat to this whole thing was there was a long discussion by Bob Lutz and other senior current executives in the auto business referencing Musk as likely being some kind of Ponzi scheme or charlatan, as a way to validate the future that they see. And what I'm fascinated by this is the fact that the number one or one of 4 or 5 points that Mr. Lutz made was that nobody's making money at that $35,000 price point that the Model 3 will come out at. And there's no way that Elon Musk and company will make money at that price point either. So his thesis is that, therefore, once investors come to their senses, Tesla will go out of business / bankrupt because of this. I'm fascinated by this because he / GM is buying batteries from Korea, and because Elon couldn't find enough batteries to build 400,000 cars a year, he had to start a plant. And so he's consuming a lot of cash in order to build out his business model. But once that model is complete, he now has facilities that give him a competitive advantage over large manufacturers exactly like GM. So I believe this is a fascinating situation because you have longtime executives running companies where the futures of millions of jobs are at stake, and they're sort of rooted in the past, and that past is quickly disappearing, especially with the advent of the Model 3 coming on. So right now, I believe the number one sort of business-focused plan that GM, Ford, and some of the other manufacturers have is the hope that Tesla will fail or Elon Musk will fail at what he's trying to do, because his failure will validate sort of the business process and plan that they've presented. And it's my belief that there may be some hiccups for Tesla, but I think the whole plan and process he's doing will work. And if it does work, he ends up bankrupting multiple companies like GM and Ford. So I did this video partially to encourage people to wake up a bit, because there's ways in which Ford and GM can make moves before Tesla truly starts delivering millions of vehicles. And during that period, it's a honeymoon period where there's an opportunity for them to pull it out. But I don't think they'll pull it out with their current mentalities. One last point I wanted to make is that for those who aren't aware, there's a CAFE standard, which is the federal government has rules about emission standards. And part of the way this whole electric car thing is working out is that if U.S. manufacturers sell a certain number of electric vehicles, that offsets against heavy polluting vehicles like trucks that they might sell. So though that balancing act facilitates why you do see some EVs, but as the CEO of Chrysler pointed out, we did make these vehicles, but every one that we sell costs us $14,000. So yes, we did make them, but we'd like to ask you not to buy them. Thank you for taking time out to watch. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir. Tschüss, macht's gut. Lehitraot. Choda hafez. And please like and subscribe, and we could definitely use your Patreon assistance. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Looking forward to our next conversation. Have a great day. And again, I'm going to take you out. We're in Washington, D.C. This is the Anacostia River, and I'm taking you out with a slow view of the nature preserve here near the RFK Stadium.